Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because we're unpacking some genuinely fascinating source material today. We're looking at leadership strategy, but we're looking at it through a very specific, highly unique lens. Our goal is to take a structured, objective look at a framework that blends your traditional organizational tactics with some deeply profound, unconventional philosophies. Whether you're a seasoned executive or honestly, just someone who loves understanding the mechanics of how people lead and succeed, this explainer is definitely going to challenge how you think about influence. So let's get right into it. What is a leader's ultimate weapon? I mean, we often hear about financial capital, market dominance, or maybe data analytics. We're totally conditioned to think about leadership in terms of spreadsheets and market share. But what if the answer is something entirely different? What if the ultimate weapon isn't something you can easily measure on a balance sheet? Okay, let's dive into this. To answer that question, we're turning directly to our primary source for today, the book Winning Strategies for Leaders by Ryuho Okawa. This text makes a really bold, upfront promise to the reader. It offers to equip leaders with, and I quote, 13 weapons for actual battles. The stated goal here is to empower individuals to utilize people and organizations effectively to create entirely new value. It's framing leadership not just as standard management, but literally as a battleground requiring a specific, potent arsenal. So let's take a look at these 13 weapons for leaders. The crucial point is understanding exactly what these weapons entail. The book essentially structures its advice as a tactical playbook, a series of distinct strategies that a leader absolutely must master to drive their organization forward and achieve tangible results. Let's look at some highlights from this arsenal. The text starts with concepts that might feel very familiar to anyone who's studied business strategy. Chapter 1 talks about having a burning sense of mission. Chapter 3 focuses on decision-making without fear of risk. Chapter 6 is all about building a foundation and a focus on strengths, right? These are foundational, completely conventional pillars of executive leadership. Now, what's really interesting about this is the dramatic pivot right in the middle of this playbook. We move from these grounded tactical business strategies straight into Chapter 12, which is titled Getting Cooperation from Invisible Power. This is a sudden and, frankly, fascinating departure from standard business rhetoric. Which brings us to the core of that pivot, the invisible power. Let's slow down here for a second because this is where the source material gets truly unique. We're shifting away from the spreadsheets, the org charts, and the standard competitive analysis. The book introduces a highly abstract, distinctly spiritual methodology right into the middle of a business strategy playbook. The author asserts that true leadership actually requires tapping into something unseen. So how exactly does the source define this? Well, according to the text, this invisible power is literally the unseen support, cooperation, and guidance derived from guardian and guiding spirits. It's super important to understand this precisely as the book outlines it. This isn't just a metaphor for intuition or good luck. It's presented as a literal spiritual framework where a leader actively seeks the backing of guiding spiritual forces to achieve their organizational goals. This is the author's unique methodology for ultimate leadership success. To actually receive this power, the author doesn't just leave it as a vague concept. The text outlines a very specific, actionable process. We've broken down this dense source text into a clear three-step methodology. Step 1 begins with open-minded prayer and maintaining a heart of gratitude. Step 2 requires intense visualization. And Step 3 culminates in humble surrender. And this brilliantly illustrates how the strategy progresses from deep, internal, emotional reflection, starting with an open mind, outward to a profound connection with universal forces. It is quite a departure from standard corporate procedure, right? That second step takes us into a concept called bending space and time. Let's look really closely at how this builds. In traditional business, visualization usually means, making a vision board or setting a 5-year goal. But the text elevates this concept to an entirely different dimension. It describes a mental process so powerful it actually interacts with the fabric of reality itself. The author states that obtaining this unseen support requires intense visualization that warps space-time to vividly picture ideals. Just let that sink in for a second. The text demands an incredibly powerful mental image of your goals. It's suggesting that the mental energy you use to picture your ideal outcome must be so forceful, so vivid, and so unwavering that it effectively bends the rules of space and time to bring that reality into existence. You aren't just planning the future, you are forcefully pulling it towards you through sheer intense mental clarity. Which leads right into the final, receptive phase.
surrender to universal energy.
But the exertion of that intense visualization is really only half the equation here. Once that reality-bending mental image is achieved, the methodology requires a complete and total shift in posture. After asserting your will, you must immediately let go. We can see exactly how this dynamic works by comparing the internal mindset with the external result, as outlined in the text. Internally, the leader is required to completely empty the mind and practice profound humility. And what's the proposed external result of this surrender? By making yourself an empty, humble vessel, the text states you are then capable of catching the great universe's energy of wealth by surrendering to a greater power. The relationship here is deeply paradoxical, but it's very clear in the source material. It is only through total humility and emptying oneself that a leader can supposedly receive this immense, invisible backing and wealth energy from the universe. We've seen how this source material begins with standard tactical business advice, only to pivot deeply into the mechanics of spiritual visualization, space-time warping ideals, and ultimate humble surrender to universal energy. It's a truly fascinating blend of the boardroom and the spiritual realm. Which brings us to our final question, and the thought I really want to leave you with today. Can spiritual surrender actually be an ultimate leadership strategy? Can emptying your mind be just as crucial as executing a business plan? It is a highly unconventional concept, but one that absolutely expands the boundaries of how we define power, influence, and success. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I look forward to exploring more fascinating ideas with you next time.